Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Tinker Talks. I'm Mark Hybers alongside...
Hi, everybody. My name's Clayton Cummins.
And you, Clayton, first time we're hearing your voice on the podcast.
It is. This is an exciting moment for me.
Yes.
And my career.
And your career, right? Although, usually you're the face in front of the camera.
You know, it's important to broaden your horizons.
Right? I
love it. A little bit. You know, it's good for the soul, mind, body.
Right? And so for those of you out there who may know the name Clayton, of course, he's come to work for us, and you may have seen him on a lot of our videos during the air show. Did a lot of work putting stuff together about Tinker for the air show, and he's been running the audio for this podcast for quite a while, but thought, well, shoot, he has a face for radio and TV, so
all of the above. Why not?
Use it for all. That's right. Awesome. So, man, today we have a really cool podcast.
It could have been 4 hours if we really wanted it to be.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And just word of caution, it's not 4 hours.
No.
But it could have been. We got a great chance today to talk to William Piazza, and all of you out there may know him as Pete Piazza, or some of you may know the Piazza Gate. He has a gate named after him. And Clayton, how good were the stories he was telling?
And, you know, every story he told, his face lit up.
Right.
He is so passionate about his past, what it was he was able to experience, and you know, talking to him, you're able to feel that, and you're invested in everything that he has to say. He's been there, done it. He's seen it all. He's somebody that you should really, if you have the chance to go hear him speak somewhere, do it.
Yes, absolutely. And he was just recently nominated to the Oklahoma Military Hall of Fame. The reason he's so popular around here is because he won a Silver Star for heroism during the Vietnam War. So, great guy. Really got into a great conversation, although we really cut short because we could have gone real long with him.
And it's people like Pete who, you kind of emphasize all the more. It's so important to respect your elders and the stories they have and what you can learn from them. At least that's kind of what I had taken away. It just kind of shapes your perspective a little bit more on things that have happened in the past, you know?
Absolutely. And this being the perfect podcast to celebrate Veterans Day, because that's why we really wanted to have him on for this particular episode, was we wanted him to share his story, and it's our way of saying thanks to all the veterans out there. So without any further ado, Clayton, if you don't mind, we're going to go ahead and join the conversation.
Let's do it.
First of all, let me just say thanks, Pete, for joining us on this podcast this morning. You tell me it's the very first time you've done a podcast?
Yes.
Yeah. Had you ever even heard of a podcast?
I heard of it on Facebook. A couple of people have talked about a podcast.
Good. Were you pretty excited to join us?
Sure. It's just another morning.
Very modest guy.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what we're going to do today is basically talk about your life and career and your time in active duty. The one thing that we want to point out is your time in Vietnam and what earned you the Silver Star. And, of course, your most recent accomplishment, you were nominated to the Oklahoma Military Hall of Fame, which is a huge honor.
Okay.
So we're going to get to that. But first, just to kind of get us in to know who you are, it's William, correct? But you go by Pete Piazza? Okay, so how did you change your name from William to Pete?
When I was overseas, mostly my tours either stateside or in Southeast Asia. And when you're overseas, the Asians have a hard time saying Piazza.
Right.
So Sergeant P, as in regular P.
Right.
And over time, it expanded to Pete. So it hung in there and said, okay, whatever.
So it's not even your middle name.
No,
it just came from Sergeant P.
Yeah.
All right, I like it. So, where are you from? Where do you hail from? Was it Georgia?
Originally, I was born in Niskayuna, New York, which is part of Schenectady.
Okay.
The Tri-City area.
Right.
Lived there from 1943 until about 1953, 54. And then we moved to Brooklyn, New York. My mother and I lived with my grandparents there for a while. Then we lived on our own and stayed there until February 1960,
Right.
when decided to come into the Air Force.
Were you only child?
Only child.
Really? Okay. And so your father wasn't around? It was just you and your mom?
They got divorced.
Okay. Awesome. What was your mom like?
A hard person to live with sometimes because she was very bossy,
Right.
but she was a nice woman. She took care of me. You know, we lived in several places. Like I said, New York, Brooklyn. Then we lived in New Jersey for a while, and then came back to Brooklyn.
Right.
You know, and that's where we ended up until I came into the Air Force.
So was she a hard person because you were you just a typical 1950s New York kid?
Technically, no, not really. I used to go out and hang out with the kids on the street and whatnot.
Right.
You know, and play stickball or even play some softball at the parks on the weekends. But overall, I was mainly a loner.
Right.
Always been, because there's nobody other than the other kids in the neighborhood. And if they went inside, I went inside too. And mainly my grandmother, because my mother was working, my grandmother took care of me.
Okay.
And I was actually a teacher. I taught her English because she was from Italy, and she didn't teach me Italian. Everybody, what? You're Italian? Why didn't I? Said, no, well, you know, it's one of those things.
Right. So stickball. That's funny you say that because I don't know if anybody plays stickball anymore, but I do remember I played as a kid.
Yeah. Well, we used to play. You know, you play it on the street.
Yeah.
You have the cars or whatever as your bases. You know, and we used to play it. Of course, everybody would have somebody standing around looking. Car coming, everybody stop, move, get out of the street, let the car go by, and then,
Right.
all right, go back to the pavilion.
It was a very skinny bat and a little ball. It was kind of
Usually
hard
it
to
was a
hit.
broomstick.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, you get a broomstick and hit the ball.
Yep. Classic. Awesome. So you go into high school. Were you still you said the Bronx? Was it where in New York did you go to high school?
Well, we went to several schools.
Okay.
Because we lived, one place we lived was on Skank Avenue in Flatbush, and another place we lived on Winthrop Street, and then several other places. And truthfully, I can't remember the names of them, because mainly we were living with my grandmother and my uncle. And as they moved, we moved too, until my mother finally got a place where she lived permanently.
Right.
And the last school I went to was George Gershwin, which was on Linden Boulevard near Skank Avenue.
Right.
One day, I said, I'm going to go in the Air Force, Mom. And she said, okay. Took me down to Flatbush, the recruiter station, and we went in there. Actually, we were planning to go into the Army, but when we went down there, all 4 branches or 5 branches of the military guys, there was only one guy in his office, and that was the Air Force guy.
No kidding.
And I said, okay, I'll go Air Force.
So everybody was out screwing off, and
No,
the Air Force
they
got
were all
you.
out to lunch. And it was a dual purpose, because the guys I was running around with at the time around Brooklyn, one had joined the Army, one had joined the Navy, one had joined the Marines, one joined the Coast Guard.
Right.
Only thing left open was the Air Force. Nobody had gone into. So I said, okay, we'll go to the Air Force. Plus, it also gets it for me to get out of Brooklyn and go see the Alamo in Texas.
Right.
Because it said, well, go travel, go see it.
At the time, that was the big goal, to see the Alamo?
It wasn't a big goal, but when he was talking and he mentioned about the Alamo, I said, yeah, I would like to go down there, see the Alamo, see something different other than the Brooklyn skyline.
Right.
And so that's what happened.
What kind of high school student were you? The
high school was basically, it was a brand new school, but it was probably built about 3 years before we went there. All the kids from that particular area, because they used to, the other school was 2 high schools. You had to take a bus or a train to get there. Mm-hmm. That's how far they were, and they finally built George Gershwin. It was okay.
Were you a good student?
I don't know. I always used to get jumped on because I'd always sit by the window looking out at the sky and wondering what's on the other side of the sky. But
well, that might have been your driving passion for the Air Force.
It might have been. I don't know at the time. But I wasn't the only one. There were several other kids that used to get jumped on. The school itself was okay. Funny thing about it was one day the teacher came in and said, okay, we need hall monitors. And a friend of mine said, well, I'll be a hall monitor. And he grabbed me and he said, come on, Pete. Back then I was known as Bill.
Right.
I hadn't got the Pete yet. And he said, come on, Bill, you come with me. We're going to be hall monitor. What's a hall monitor? Oh, you stand in the hallway or stairways, and you're like a road guard. You make sure that everybody goes up one line, comes down the other stairs, so that they don't crisscross. That started. Okay, whatever.
Right.
But you get out of class 10 minutes early because you got to get your little vest put on and then go to your location.
Right.
So I said, okay, whatever.
Good. So did you make good grades?
Truthfully, no.
Not? Okay.
Average grades. I was an average kid,
right.
I think, anyway.
Had nothing wrong with that. What year was it when you went to the Air Force recruiter?
I joined in February of 60.
60, okay.
Yeah, we went down the week before my birthday.
Right.
Which was the 18th of February. And my mom took me down to recruiters. And the recruiter talked to me and, gave me all the good lies that recruiters do. And said, okay, you take the test here. And I just took a test and gave it to him. And he said, okay, we'll contact you once we get all of, paperwork done. Okay. Went home. It was like 3 or 4 days. And we were sitting down at the dinner table on the 17th of February. And the phone rang, and I got up, I went and answered it, and it was the recruiter.
Right.
He said, would you like to come in tomorrow and join? And I thought about it a minute, and I said, okay. And then I went back, sat down at the table, and my family asked me, who was that? I said, this was the recruiter. What do you want? He said, he wants me to come in tomorrow, raise my hand, and I'm going to San Antonio. But it's your birthday tomorrow. Yep.
So you joined on your birthday?
I joined on my birthday.
Oh, that's awesome.
But official records had me joining the 19th because that's when we got to San Antonio.
Right.
And that was a whole different trip.
Had you already finished high school?
No.
Okay.
I bailed out of school.
Okay. All right.
I was one of several group of folks back then that said, not for me.
Right.
And anyway, joined the Air Force, went down the next day, Whitehall Street, Federal Building, raised my hand with a whole bunch of other guys. And they gave us some tests or something, medical one, and they booked us over to Newark Airport. And we waited there for a plane. The plane came in, and it was like a old C-119 aircraft.
Oh.
Passenger job, civilian. They put us on, and I remember looking out the window, and you could see the moon and the clouds. I said, okay, nice weather. And most of us had light clothing on. Mm-hmm. This is February in New York City, and you're wearing
chilly.
light clothes. The weather's weird.
Yeah.
we got up in the air and landed in Pittsburgh. They had 3 feet of snow. It was in the 20s. When the plane stopped and they turned everything off, everybody grabbed the blankets and put them on because we were so cold. They loaded up another group of people. We were on the ground for about an hour and a half. Then they took off. And I always remember looking out because I was sitting over the wing, and the wings were going up and down all the time.
Right.
Oh, hell, we're going to crash. It didn't. We got to San Antone, and it was raining. It was cold, and everybody was freezing. We got off the plane, and the TIs were so nice to us. Get your butts over here. Stand there in line. Come on, form up and whatnot. All that good stuff like that.
Right.
I said, oh, Lord, what did we get ourselves into? They put us on a bus. And, 410 wasn't complete at that time.
Okay.
And as they took us around from the airport to Lackland, we had to go on and off 410 to the access road, back and forth, because they were still building it. We got to 3706 Squadron. Behind Mitchell Hall over there, where near the BX is, the gas station is now. TI jumped on us, get off the part, don't form up, and they were nice then. They took us to chow.
Oh, that's nice.
It was like about 6 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And we got our first chow, taste of Air Force chow.
Yeah.
And everybody seemed to be pretty happy, and also because it was warm too. And then our Air Force career started. Now, the funny part about this is we had 3 flights.
Okay.
2 of the flights were Air National Guard, and they got everything. We were the active duty flight, and we got nothing.
Like as far as gear, equipment?
Equipment, everything. We didn't know why, and every Friday we would change TIs.
Wow.
And nobody would tell us why.
Right.
But we finally found out when we switched from 3706 over to the 3701, they were deactivating 3706, and that's why. But we were the last 3706 active duty, and they wanted us nobody wanted us. So I said, okay. April, we graduated from basic.
Right.
And they gave us basically 3 choices when we were in class one time and said, okay, you can either be a cook, a medic, a cop, or a photograph.
Hey.
There were some people in the flight that could be mechanics, engineers, whatever, because they had good experience in that.
Right.
Most of us, no. We later found out, as one of our TIs told us, we were part of that McNamara's 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
We were considered that.
Right.
And those people don't understand what that was. And McNamara, who was the Secretary of Defense at the time, said he wanted to bring 100,000 people into the Air Force, and that they didn't have top qualifications. That was okay.
Right.
Bring them in anyway, and see how far they'll go. Some of the guys I were with, they were only in the Air Force about 2 years and got out. They couldn't handle it. I guess I was lucky, and I went 28 years. So maybe I wasn't that bad off as I thought I was,
right?
Or they thought I was. Anyway, we graduated, and the Air Force said, okay, here's what we're going to give you, those 3 positions. Pick one. So I picked cop, photograph, cop, cook.
Okay.
And the Air Force said, okay, you're going to be a cop. 2/3 of our flight became a cop automatic. Didn't matter what you put down.
Right.
And we found out later from a friend of mine that worked in personnel that at that time, the Strategic Air Command, SAC, wanted cops.
Okay.
And that's why 2/3 of our squadron, no matter what your testing was, you were a cop, period.
They needed cops.
But the problem was the tech school was there at Lackland, but the tech school couldn't handle us. So we went direct duty assignment, DDA.
Really?
And if you're a basic, you go to home, go on leave, and then you go to your squadron.
Mm-hmm.
My squadron was the 817th Combat Defense Squadron at Pease Air Force Base, New Hampshire.
Yeah, New Hampshire, sure.
Guarding B-47s and KC-97 aircraft on alert. It's up to the squadron to teach you how to be a cop.
Really?
And it's not easy for the squadron. That puts a lot of pressure on them. But they did a damn good job. They have to teach you from basic all the way up to at least the 5 level.
Right.
You know, and they did it. We had some screw-ups, yeah.
Sure.
But we learned. And I spent a year and a half at Pease out there on the boonies, guarding the alert bombers and tankers. Had several incidents during that time which scared the hell out of you.
Right.
One was when the B-47 crashed taking off, and one night I was on the SAT team, Security Alert Team,
Mm-hmm.
and we responded out there, and Sergeant Walker, Staff Sergeant, posted me on the taxiway where the plane crashed, and I'm standing there, and I turn around and I look, and here comes the fire department. And this big red fire truck is sliding towards me because he hit the ice on the taxiway,
Right.
and he couldn't stop or turn. So he's sliding like that. Oh Lord, I'm going to get hit. I'm moving this way. He's coming. He missed me, but not by much. So
what caused the plane to crash? Do you know? Was it just the ice?
Well, it was a 4-plane flight that was taking off.
Uh-huh.
They were going to England. And 3 of the birds took off on time, but they used all the runway, literally.
No.
And they barely cleared the trees at the north end of the runway. The 4th bird, the crew chief for the bird got sick, and they had to wait for a replacement crew chief.
Right.
And the guy got there, and he was running late, naturally he came from off base, got in the plane, and as they took off, from what we learned, they told investigation showed, as the plane was taking off, the wings were bouncing like this,
Right.
and the outrigger wheel on a 47 hit one of the lights on the runway,
Oh my.
and when it did, it made the plane turn, and then the plane actually flipped over
Right.
and crashed. All 4 people on board, the crew, died.
Right.
That night, we also had to kill a canine dog.
Oh, really?
The first guy that got to the crash was a canine handler and his dog. Back then, the dogs were very aggressive dogs, not like today.
They're more disciplined today. More disciplined today.
Well, they teach them different.
Right.
Anyway, the canine dog went up underneath the wing, and when the canine handler pulled him back out, he had the arm of one of the crew,
Oh my.
and he was chewing on it. And he tried to get the arm away, and the dog turned on him,
Wow.
which they were subject to do.
Right.
Because one of the canine handlers one time was walking his dog, and the dog, something happened, and he had his MA1 jacket with his lighter in the zip pocket on the side,
Right.
and the dog's mouth literally went all the way up, and when the fangs came down, it caught the lighter, and they said that's the only thing that would have saved his arm, because if that dog had punctured his arm, he might have, blood and whatever. So
Right. Well, that's a tough night.
those canine dogs were very aggressive.
Right. And you were just a young kid
Yeah.
when all this happened.
Yeah, it happens, unfortunately. Then in August of 61, I went PCS to Okinawa, Japan,
Right.
Kadena. My first tour outside of the United States. Went there on an 18-month tour. Spent 3 years.
Right.
It was such a good tour. I said, I don't want to go back to the States. I was having too much fun.
Yeah.
And they asked me when I was over there, you want to re-enlist? And I said, sure, why not? I'm getting paid. I get good food, get a place to live. I'll re-enlist.
Hey, you had a great assignment.
That started. It was Okinawa back then in 1960s was run by the American government.
Right.
Wasn't Japanese or Okinawan.
Yeah.
You had all the branches of the military there: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, and Coast Guard. And yes, there were fights among all 5 branches.
Sure.
But it was a good tour. Good island. Good, good thing.
Back then, we were not involved with Vietnam at all yet, right?
Believe it or not, we were.
Okay.
But it wasn't to the extent that it was going to be come 65 on.
Right. So you had no idea at this time that Vietnam was in your future.
There was a support people over there, basically small contingency to train.
Right.
The ARVN, Army of Vietnam.
Right.
South Vietnam. And it wasn't that much. But interesting thing about Kadena, we had several different aircraft on that base. You had SAC, you had PACAF, you had Recon, you had CIA, Air America.
Right. And
several times when I was on flight, especially daytime and evening shifts, you'd have aircraft coming in with emergency landing. One day, a RF-101 came in, landed, and we're sitting in the vehicle looking. And I was only an airman second class at the time,
right,
2-striper. And we're looking at this RF bird, and we looked at it, all 3 of us looked at each other and just shook our heads. And how does he get a palm tree in his wing?
The palm tree was in the wing of the plane? Okay.
Okay, RF-101 is a Delta fighter with slant wings.
Right.
And he's got part of the palm tree wing,
like the leaves and branches?
The branch
in
his wing.
Right.
So he's flying awful low.
So he clipped one somewhere.
Yeah. And then one day what was it, A-26, which was the Air America combat with machine guns in the front and everything, comes in. And he had more than 50 bullet holes in his tail.
Oh, my.
So he was flying awful low someplace, too.
Right.
They wouldn't tell us where, but putting 2 and 2 together, they were either flying low over Vietnam someplace, or they were flying around Taiwan.
Right. And that's still a pretty good distance between Kadena and Vietnam.
It is,
that's
but
a pretty
not
good
that
trip,
far.
right?
Not that far. We figured it. If it was bullet holes, it was probably Taiwan, somewheres in the Straits.
Right.
The RF-100, it probably was flying close to North Vietnam and China somewhere.
Right. Awesome.
Don't
Well,
know.
we're going to tell you,
us.
right? Now, at this time, you were not married yet?
No.
Okay.
Not married.
Did you meet your wife while you were in
No.
overseas?
I met
No?
several girls while I was in Vietnam, or in Okinawa.
Right.
One I wanted to marry, but she didn't want to get married. So anyway, come 64, I left, came back to the States and was stationed at Shepherd Air Force Base.
Right.
Interesting thing about Shepherd is that year and a half I was stationed here, worked law enforcement, which was great. But one day, Air Training Command, ATC, came in with their IG team. They wanted to pull a mobility exercise. Well, back in 64, 65, mobility in ATC was not even a word anybody knew. There was no mobility.
Right.
But we were going to do a mobility exercise. And question was asked, what do we do? He said, well, we'll tell you what you're going to do, and you just do it as we tell you.
Right.
Which we're, because we had no mobility gear, nothing. So they took 2 13-man teams and a 2-man headquarters element, 28 of us, and said, okay, you're going to be the mobility team. Okay. You're relieved of duty. You go up to the hospital and get your physicals. Okay. Everybody went up to the hospital, and we were in a big room, and a corpsman come in and he said, okay, 14 over here, 14 over here, turn around, face the walls, each way, drop your drawers, bend over, because the doctor's going to come in and give you a shot. What do you mean a shot? Well, you're going to get a hemoglobin shot. You ever hear of it?
I have not.
It's basically a short GG shot. You get it going to South Vietnam, or you get it going Southeast Asia.
Yep.
Okay, so everybody turn around, face the walls, drop their drawers. We all bent over, and the doctor came in with a corpsman with a tray, walks down the line, one side, pops everybody with a different needle.
Right.
Then goes down the other side, and starts to walk out the door, and she turns around and said, okay, you can all pull your pants up now. And everybody's looking, and it's a female doctor.
Right.
And we're like, oh, hell, she just popped 28 guys, and I bet you she loved every minute of it. And she probably did. I said, okay.
Yeah.
But the GG shot is like taking peanut butter, cooking it, putting it in a needle, and then sticking it in your butt.
Oh, my.
Because you walk around for about 15 minutes holding your butt, limping. Okay, and it's weird. So, okay, we get back on the bus, we go down to personnel, and they out-process all 28 of us, give us our orders and everything. We go down to the flight line. They put us on a T-28 aircraft, twin prop job.
Right.
Not enough seats for everybody, so everybody's sitting in the seat, and then the rest are all sitting in the aisle. And they taxi down the runway, down the end of the runway, and line up, and all of a sudden, boom, we're
Off
up in
you
the
went.
air.
Right.
And we're all looking at each other. Wait a minute. We got orders, and the orders say Vietnam. And we said, no. Nobody told us we were going this far. Well, we flew as far probably about Texas, New Mexico border before the plane turned around and came back and went, sigh of relief.
So you were a part of a mobility exercise to Vietnam. You just didn't know you actually weren't going. They didn't tell you that you were just an exercise.
They gave us official orders.
Right.
They said we were going from Shepherd to Travis to Vietnam.
Right.
So, okay. Anyway, we came back, got off the plane. Then a problem came up. It said, okay, get your bags off the plane. And we all looked at each other. What bags? Oh, you didn't know. The guys that were not part of the mobility went back to the barracks because they were told, grab all the clothes you can get, good, bad, and military, whatever. Put them in any type of bag you can find,
Right.
and bring them here and put them on the plane. That shows that you have some kind of mobility.
Yeah.
Well, they went back to the barracks and just opened the lockers and started grabbing stuff, putting it in the AWOL bags, suitcases, duffel bags, whatever.
Sure.
And just cramming stuff in there. So now we had to take them all back and sort all of that out, which the rest of the day everybody's trying to figure where goes what. Anyway, about a month later, first sergeant or the orderly room calls and said, you need to come up, pick your orders up. Oh, I got orders? Yeah, okay. So I went and picked my orders up, and I asked them, I says, where is Phan Rang? Vietnam. Okay, where in Vietnam?
Right.
And they have a map, and they showed me and kind of where it's at. It wasn't posed on it, but close enough. I said, okay. So come December, our PCS out of Shepherd went home on leave, and then in first part of January went to Hamilton Air Force Base, California, for 3 days of M16 training.
Right.
Supposedly. And what it was they had a bunch of us there, and they said, okay, you're going through a AZR type training. You're going to learn about the M16, the M60, M79, hand grenades, slap flares.
Right.
Because you're going to Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we had classroom training, and we have weapons firing. 3 days. all 3 days it rained in California. Come the third day, we were supposed to do an exercise. They took us and put us on the bus, drove us over to this village they had set up that looked like a Vietnamese village.
Right.
And said, okay, there is what the Vietnamese village looks like. Okay, that's Vietnamese village. What do we do now? Well, normally we would line you all up and move you through and squad firearm tactics and show whatnot. But because it's been raining for 3 days and there's 2 feet of water in the village, we can't let you go into the village. Why not? Because safety said it's a hazard.
Huh.
Guy raised his hand and he said, we're going to Vietnam. Safety doesn't play a factor. Why is it? Because we're here in the States and safety said you can't do it. So we didn't go through the village,
right.
which was all right because nobody wanted to get wet anyway.
Right.
The next day, well, we went back, had some classroom training. The next day they put us on a bus, took us over to Travis Air Force Base and put us on a plane, a commercial job, and flew us to Hawaii, then flew us to Guam, flew us to Philippines, and then we flew into Vietnam.
Long trip.
Going into Vietnam was kind of an experience none of us had had. Most of us were Air Force people on there, not all cops.
Right.
Maintenance personnel and medics and whatnot. But we're coming into Vietnam, and the pilot comes over to PA system and says, pull your shades down. Okay, everybody pull the shades down. Put your seatbelts on. Lean forward. Okay, why? Everybody, we're going into Tan Son Nhut. And we're up here like this far. Everybody's ready. All of a sudden the plane does this.
So your nose diving.
Straight down.
Right.
Stops. The combat drop.
Right, yeah.
And the reason they do that is because Charlie sits at the end of the runways, and as the planes come in with their AK-47s and whatnot, they shoot at them and put bullet holes in the plane and try to kill them, who's ever in the plane, or blow up the plane. So that way they do the combat drop, come in, boom, boom. Going off, taking off, they do the same thing. Full power, straight up. So you don't give Charlie that chance to shoot at you.
How scary was that, nose diving?
For the first time, very scary.
So this is in 65?
66.
66, okay.
Yeah. Then when we got to Tan Son Nhut, they took us off. And naturally, once they open the door, you feel all that nice warm air from Vietnam comes, and everybody's in 1505s, and all of a sudden you're got air conditioning, great, and all of a sudden you're sweating.
It's very humid.
Humidity just.
Yeah.
But they take us off the plane, put us in a terminal there, the MAC terminal, and explain that, okay, medics here, whatnot, everybody splits off to different sections.
Right.
Well, there were 58 cops. And they said, you were all supposed to be going to Phan Rang. Well, the problem we have is Phan Rang isn't built and doesn't have room for you. So we've got to figure out what to do with you. So for about a week and a half, we just hung around Tan Son Nhut in civvies, basically. They said we could go downtown, Tan Son Nhut if you want to, Saigon. And I said, oh, okay. So about 4 or 5 of us got on the bus, and we're looking at the bus, and why have you got cages on the windows? And the bus driver says, well, Charlie likes to sit out there, Charlie being the Viet Cong.
Right.
Or NVA, North Vietnamese Army, likes to sit out there and throw hand grenades through the window.
Oh, my.
So they put the cages on the window, so this way the grenade hits the window, it bounces off.
Right.
But Charlie found a way to get around that. Oh, yeah? What? They put fish hooks on the hand grenade, so when they throw the hand grenade, the fish hook will catch the grills and hang there instead of bouncing off. Oh, thanks. Needed to know that big time, let me tell you. Okay. Anyway, we go down Saigon. We get off on the corner there, and the bus driver tells us, okay, you can go anywhere in the city. But he said, if you start to see the white mice, that was the police in Saigon.
Right.
They wear a white uniform. And because they're small, they call them white mice. GIs, you know how we are.
Yeah.
Anyway, see, as you go out from the center of the city and you see less and less white mice, if you get to a point to where there's only 1 or 2 white mice, turn around and come back in. Because the further out you get and there's less white mice, the more you're going to see the VC and the NVA.
Right.
Okay? So we didn't go very far out. Made sure there was at least 4 or 5 white mice on every corner. But we started walking, and Frank Picker's staff sergeant, friend of mine, he and I were stationed in Okinawa together. We were starting walking, and Danny Carmike, another staff sergeant, said, well, let's go this way over here, because it looks like there's some bars over there. We'll get a beer. Okay. So we start walking that way. All of a sudden, there's a boom, explosion. And we stopped, and we looked around, and a block up, there was a big explosion. And we said, do we want to go that way? No.
Right.
And Americans were running back this way, including the Vietnamese. And what happened? Some kids took a bag and gave it to the GIs who were standing on the corner, and then the kids ran away, and the bag blew up.
Oh, my.
We later, from the MPs, we learned that they put a hand grenade in it. And GIs are very nice when kids come up to them.
Right.
GI, you buy, you know. And, okay, yeah. Unfortunately, what was in the bag was a hand grenade along with some other stuff that blew up. So we said, no, we don't want this.
Yeah.
We went back to the bus stop. Next bus we got on, came back to Thompson, and we said, we'll stay here for the rest of the time.
Right.
That was our first
Welcome to Vietnam. So was this the area that you were at when the night that you guys got into the battle where you earned
no,
your... Okay.
What they did, they finally sent us to Cam Bay.
Right.
And we spent all 1966 at Cam Bay. Then I came back, went to Clinton Sherman Air Force Base down here the road, Burns Flats.
Right.
When I went in, I handed orders to the commander. He checked them out, and I said, "Sir, would you sign the last piece of paper, please?" He looked at it, looked at me, looked at it, and said, "I will sign it, but you're not going anywhere." I just got there that week,
right,
and I had orders, a request to leave. That's how bad Clinton Sherman Bay Air Force Base was. There's nothing there. He signed it. I got there in February. In April, I went TDY to Lackland for AZR training 5 days. And in May, I left BCS going back to Vietnam.
Right.
My second tour. Got to Vietnam, was at Bien Hoa Air Base, and that's where everything changed because Bien Hoa used to get rocketed and mortared and even zapper attacks too. Started out working the night shift, basically 8 at night to about 6 or 9 to about 8, 7 in the morning on the west side and the north side of the base. We had 4 sectors. When I was there, Captain Marty Strones was my flight commander. And one night he called me in and he says, I understand that you drive like a New York taxi driver with the lights off and speed is all over the place. I was a staff sergeant at the time. Right. And I said, well, some people tell me that. He says, well, I want you to take over the mobility of the resupply teams. And I said, well, what does it entail? He told me, and I said, okay, yeah, I'll do it. That's no problem. Basically, we had 2 resupply teams, one east, one west. The west took care of the north, and the east took care of the south sectors also. We drove around in a nice blue government pickup truck carrying 40 Mike, M16, M60, slap flares, sea rats, coffee, anything we could carry. And basically my team's job was that we would respond to any position if they got attacked to
Right.
resupply them.
Right.
And then we would go back, load up again, and then be mobile all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Free reign of the whole base.
So this is all inside the wire.
Inside the wire.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. On the 30th of January, about 3 o'clock in the morning, the sirens went off, and we got called to go to CSC. Went to CSC, and they said the bases from Nha Trang north to Da Nang air bases were under attack,
Right.
rockets and mortars, and that every base, all the air bases in Vietnam automatically went into red alert. So we need to get the vehicles. That was another job my team had, is we would come to work basically at 5:30 in the evening, go to the motor pool, pick up vehicles and bring them to the armory and put them along the armory area there, so that the evening shift, our shift when they came on, would pick up the vehicles for posting.
Right.
And then in the morning, they would take the vehicles back. We'd pick them up and bring them back in.
Mm-hmm.
So we had some pretty long hours, at least 12 or more. So we got the vehicles, and everybody, the base, doubled up or all the way around. No attack happened on the 30th of January, only up from Nha Trang north. Said, okay, so we come to work the next night. Now we were in Tet of 68, which basically is the New Year's for Chinese and Vietnam
Right.
people. So there's supposed to be a yellow alert where Charlie wasn't going to attack. They said they weren't going to attack, but they lie anyway. Come 12 o'clock, midnight, 30th, they called us in the CSC and said, okay, General William C. Momeyer, the commander of 7th Air Force, got intel that all the bases were going to be attacked tonight or this morning, the 30th first. So we're going into red alert. Go get your stuff. So we got all our stuff. We broke the teams down into 4 teams, one in each sector, and then we got all the vehicles. And come 1 o'clock, no attack. Come 2 o'clock, no attack. Well, what happens over a period of time, you get it, you're ready to go, the attack is imminent, nothing happens. You start going, oh, Lord, here we go, another fake attack now. Well, come 3 o'clock, Luther Young, Airman Second Class, who was in the Ableton Tower in the bomb dump. It's a tall tower with concrete on top.
Right.
And he's got a button there, and the guy, I don't remember his name, in the base water tower, up on that tower, also has the same button, which sounds the sirens, the base sirens. Mm-hmm. They spotted the rockets taking off. So they hit the button. That gives basically somewhere about 20, 25 seconds warning before the rockets hit, which saves lives.
Right.
So they sounded the siren. I was over on the northwest corner of the base, over by the end of the runway, and all of a sudden we hear the siren. So I stopped the vehicle, told the augmentees, I had 3 augmentees in the back, get out of the vehicle, take cover. And we took cover, and the rockets come in, bounced all over the base and whatnot, and a couple of mortar rounds too. And during this time, and a little bit after, on the radios, I hear that Captain Maisie, who was our operations officer, was at Bunker Hill 10, and he was calling for Defense 6, who was the other resupply team, mm-hmm. Sergeant Lee and Simmons, to respond over to Bunker Hill 10 and give them some more slap flares, because they were running out of slap flares. And Lee kept saying he can't, because at the MP checkpoint, on the map, the MP checkpoint, and like at Bunker Hill 10, the MP checkpoint here.
Right.
MP checkpoint was a point where you go into the 101st Airborne Brigade area from the base.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what had happened was Lee and Simmons were just past Bunker Hill 10, went up to the MP checkpoint to give them some coffee, the two MPs there. And he told the augmentees he had, well, you guys go ahead and eat your sea rats because we're going to be here for a little bit, take a rest, no rushing around.
Right.
And while they were there, a squad of, or a platoon actually, size VCNVA unit had come through the fence and were trying to take over the MP checkpoint.
Wow.
Okay, the two MPs were really lucky because they had two MPs, each had their 45s with 3 magazines and one M14 with 2 magazines. Mm-hmm. The platoon would have wiped them out in a heartbeat, but because Lee, Simmons, and the 4 augmentees were there, had all that firepower, they couldn't take over that MP checkpoint. Basically, they were there trying to take it over to stop the Army from coming in to help us if they were going to come in.
Right.
So I said, okay, I got my augmentees, put them in the vehicle, and I drove all the way from the west side all the way to the east side where the MP checkpoint on the perimeter road. Got there, went up to Lee. I said, where's your flares? He got the flares. We grabbed them and said, come on with me. I left my augmentees there for more firepower. And then Lee and I went back the way I came down to where the bomb dump was. And then we turned to the left and came down to the new runway being built. I turned, went left, and then went down the new runway. And a couple of canines along the runway stopped us. What's going on? I said, I don't know. Right now we got rockets and mortars that came in and maybe some zapper attacks because we didn't know it was a full-blown attack. We figured it was a zapper attack.
Right.
Come up behind the behind Bunker Hill 10, got the slap flares, and we brought them up to Captain Maisie, and he's got everybody there, mainly the NCOs, talking, trying to figure out because there's no ground attack yet. Mm-hmm. And here's a flare, sir. Okay. He's trying to figure out what's going on. All of a sudden, there's a boom. And that was the first RPG round that Charlie had fired at the bunker. And it hit the sandbags, and the M60 that was on top of it just fell over and fell down on the road. Didn't destroy it or nothing, just fell there and laid there. And you got to, as I tell the ALS class, and I say, you got to remember, we got umpteen people there, 20 people or so,
right,
and everybody 17 to about 26 years old, and only 2 guys had ever been in a battle, and that was from the Korean War.
Right.
And nobody had been in a battle other than rockets or mortars, and all of a sudden you hear a boom like, what is going on?
Right.
And then somebody yells out, look, and they're pointing up in the sky. And to me, I always say, I see this RPG round going over, lands and goes boom. And to me, I always thought, oh, it looked like Superman flying. It's weird, but
Right.
And Captain Maisie automatically said, scatter. Everybody booked out to a different location to cover their positions. Basically, like I said, 20 people there. You had 3 guys for the bunker, Captain Maisie, an Army warrant officer, the QRF team, Quick Reaction Force, and 2 fire department folks.
Right.
They were only there because of if the elephant grass caught on fire, they would call the rest of the fire department come put it out. Well, those 2 guys jumped in their truck. They booked. They didn't want nothing about that area.
Right.
So they got out of there. But we all scattered, and as I'm going behind the bunker, here's the Army warrant officer sitting there on the ground holding an M16 with an XM148 grenade launcher. And I said, I thought he was an officer, but several years ago I found out he was a warrant officer.
Right.
I said, sir, you know how to use that? He looked at me and he just shook his head. No, he's a helicopter pilot. He can fly a helicopter, but he can't use an M16
right,
and an XM148. So I grabbed the ammo, and I moved over to the right. Now, the French love those bunkers. I don't know why. But anyway, the bunker's there. So I'm on the right-hand side, and this is where Charlie and I start playing tit for tat. He'd already fired 2. I heard the 3rd round go and hit the bunker. So I moved over, loaded a 148 round in, and there's no everything's Kentucky windage.
Right.
The XM148 had two triggers. One that comes back to where the grip of the M16 is, but it's outside and you can pull it. But when you pull it, it goes to the right. It pulls right.
Right.
So you got to aim way over here to pull over fire here. The other one is where the magazine goes in.
Mm-hmm.
You got just enough room for your thumb to go in and push the little trigger that's there, but it goes forward. Anyway, that's the one I used the other one, the one by the handguard first, and I said, nope, trigger popped up there. But you don't have the infrared scopes or the scopes you have now.
Right.
So, like I said, it's Kentucky windage, and I'm trying to figure out how far. The distance of firing is probably from, say, about here to 100 meters down in either direction. And it's dark 30 in the morning, and you have very little light. So I'm playing, hope I can hit something.
Right.
I fired 10 rounds. Charlie fired 13. When he fired his last round, and I waited, every round hits something, and I hear the boom, then I step out and I'd fire. Well, that 10th round, I aimed it just a little higher, popped it, it went down, and there was a big boom. And just like in the movies, they do. You see explosion, you see bodies flying in the air. Everybody inside the bunker was yelling, screaming, you got him, you got him, you got him, yeah, we're yelling back and forth. But what we didn't know is that 13th round hit by the eyelet of the bunker. And when it hit, it's like it hit, explodes, and then it goes through that because that's the weak part of the bunker. And it caught Captain Maisie standing inside the bunker, square in the back.
Right.
And killed him instantly. But because there was no lights and they were all firing out of the bunker, they didn't know he was killed. So he was laying on the floor of the bunker. At this time, we're all yelling, screaming, and whatnot, and all of a sudden, here comes the 145th Aviation Battalion, choppers, the Cobra gunships and the Hueys, and they're flying. And that's the first time I've been that close to a Huey or a Cobra gunship. And that Cobra gunship come flying over my head because I had moved from where I was up on top of the bunker because you get a better sight of what's going on. I said, I don't want to be here when that minigun's firing, because I think, to me, he was like 5 feet above me firing that minigun.
Right.
And I could feel rounds flying past me. I said, down I go. I went down into the bunker and I tripped over Captain Maisie, but we didn't know it was Captain Maisie. I asked, who's this on the ground? Nobody could answer. And you're inside a bunker like this. Mm-hmm. Rounds are bouncing off the wall that they're firing, and they're hot rounds. They can go down your neck and burn you and whatnot. And all that noise, so we got to get that guy out of here. So we took Maisie out and we put him on the little stairs leading out. But we never knew who it was because he was still face down.
Right.
Then I went back in, and I was only in there a couple of more minutes, and I said, "This is not. I'd rather stand outside because I can see better, I can hear better, and know what's going on." So I went back up on top, and I'm on the radio. You got a handheld radio, HT100 Motorola's. They're good for probably about 100 yards. After that, they don't work, but mine work for great for some reason. Anyway, communicating CSC, Central Security Control. What's going on out there? We're firing from here, there, going back and forth. Then they called me and said, all right, we want you to fire on inside the base. There was the taxiway, the aircraft, and the firing, the arming shack. And there's a dip in the ground there next to the taxiway. And they said, that's where Charlie's forming up to move on the aircraft, and we want you to fire in there with 40 Mike. Okay. I take the XM148, I load it up, I aim up high like this so the round will drop down because it's only like maybe 50, 75 meters out.
Right.
from where we were at Bunker Hill 10. I pop around, nothing happens. Why? Open it up, look at the round, and there's an indent in the round, but not deep enough to set the charge off. Load it up, try it again, nothing happened. So I get another XM148 from somebody else, try it, nothing happened. Different round, same, just a little indent. Get two M79 grenade launchers and tried it with them, would not fire. All of a sudden there's rounds coming in from off base. So I turn around, I popped that round, and it goes off.
Yeah, the other way.
Fires off base.
Right.
I tried the other one, pop, fires off. What's going on? It will fire into the base, but it'll fire off the base.
Interesting.
Nobody's ever been able to explain to me why that did that. Even the armorers, when they looked at the weapons work,
Right.
just would not fire. Man, after the whole battle and whatnot, there were 2 Americans in the arming shack that got shot up, and they didn't get shot up, but the arming shack did, and they stayed on the ground low as they could during the whole time. And I figured, well, maybe that's why somebody up there didn't want me firing that way.
Right.
I don't know. The only other guy, unfortunately, that got killed that morning in the battle was Airman Second Class Ed Muse, augmentee. When Captain Marty Strones was bringing his sweep team over there, that area to find capture or kill the Charlies, they were going around the area there, and the first guy was a cop. He went around the corner, and he saw Charlie get up, throw a hand grenade. He shot Charlie as he was going down, and he yelled, "Grenade!" Second guy was a cop, comes around the corner, heard grenade, yells grenade, he goes down. Third guy goes around it, and it's Ed Muse. And he didn't go down. He stood up. He was still standing up. Hand grenade landed in front of him and killed him.
Oh, my.
Fourth guy came up behind him and saw what happened. And that was the only 2. Now, that's something nobody else can explain to me. All the bullets fired that day on 31 January. Captain Mazie was killed by an RPG round. Ed Muse was killed by a hand grenade. Nobody was killed by a bullet, no American.
Right.
Nobody can explain why.
Luck.
But yet we killed 153 Charlies.
Wow.
We captured 25
Right.
on base. We wanted to go off base outside the MLR, main line of resistance, and see how many we killed out there. The Army said, no, you can't go out because there's booby traps.
Right.
Many years later, when Colonel then Mazie retired, or Strones rather, and Bob Connors went back to find the mass graves that they were buried in. The Charlies were buried in. They talked to a colonel in the Vietnamese army, and he said they lost 999 men in that battle.
Oh, my.
At Bien Hoa.
Right.
They have 330 some. They don't know where they're at. They think they're buried in mass graves still, but they don't know where, and they're trying to find them.
Right.
He also said that your intel said you're supposed to have 1,500 enemy troops attack Bien Hoa and 2,500 attack Tan Son Nhut that same time, those 2 bases. He says that's wrong. 5,000 enemy troops were dedicated to attack those 2 bases. 2,500 to each base.
Wow.
We had 475 cops and augmentees guarding Bien Hoa against 2,500.
And only lost 2.
Odds are a little off there.
Yeah.
Tan Son Nhut had 1,300 cops and augmentees, and they had a better chance, more people than we did.
Right.
Charlie wanted that base, Bien Hoa, very bad. Tan Son Nhut only because of 7th Air Force headquarters and MACV headquarters being on the base, basically.
Right.
But they wanted Bien Hoa. And the only reason I can think they wanted Bien Hoa because Wen Cao Key, who was the Air Force general, that was his home base, and they wanted to upset him.
Right.
Who knows?
And MAC-V wasn't supposed to be a thing back then, right? MAC-V was not supposed to be known about back then, right? Or very little known about MAC-V.
Well, MAC-V was there at Tan Son Nhut.
Right.
So they controlled a lot of things that were going on.
Right. Oh yeah.
But
the stories are famous now.
Yeah. Basically, the attack at Bien Hoa was a three-prong attack from the east, the southeast, and the west.
Right.
Okay. The interesting thing, many years later, I went down to Tyler, Texas, and talked to an Army guy in the 199th Light Infantry Battalion.
Yeah.
He was out that night on a PPP site, which is a small radar unit, probably no bigger than that map over there or tall, which is like a regular screen,
right?
With a little radar thing that goes around. And I know because I worked it at Bien Hoa. We tested it out there in the back of a Jeep for about 30 days. And you could pick up the people out there moving around, but it's not in color. It's in like green,
right?
Dark, light green thing. And he told me, he said, yeah, we were out there 8 clicks to the east of Bien Hoa. We're standing out there in our area, and a radar unit picked up this movement. And it kept going, and more people. And he said, we called it into 3rd Corps headquarters, which was just outside of Bien Hoa Air Base on the southeast corner down there. And we told them, and he said, they said it was probably friendlies going home for the Tet holiday. When actuality it was the VC and the NVA. And the first thing that come to my mind when I saw the movie Tora, 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 the radar site on top of the hill picks up the Japanese coming in from the northwest, and they call the command center, and that officer gets on there and tells them, oh, that's probably the B-17s coming in from the States. They would have been coming in from the northeast, not the northwest. And nobody went out to check. And that, Tet was the same. History repeats itself, I tell the ALS class. I said, it's weird, but it does happen.
Well, it was a very big battle. And that's what earned you your Silver Star.
9 days later, they woke me up,
right,
and said, get dressed in 1505s and go up to the headquarters. Okay. So I get dressed, go over there to headquarters, and here's the colonels and whatnot, and a couple of chiefs and whatnot, and Lieutenant Novak, who was a cop, and he explained to us what happened. So I'm showing them on a map what's happening. It's a grid map, and he says, all of a sudden somebody comes in and said, he's here. Oh, okay. We go outside, and it's an open area with all sand. And they put me over here. They line up over here. The roadway's here, and the car pulls up. And 4-star flag flying on the flag.
Right.
General gets out, William C. Momeyer, 7th Air Force Commander.
Wow.
He comes walking down that line, and shaking everybody's hand, talking to them and whatnot. Gets up to the colonel, shakes his hand. Then all of a sudden he walks over to me, and I salute him, sir. And he said, you know why we're here? No, sir. Nobody's told me. He says, well, we're going to present you with something today. Okay. Turns, looks at an officer, and the officer starts reading the citation. Everybody's standing at attention. Another person comes over, hands him the star, he pins it on me, shakes my hand, salute, and he gives me the citation. Okay, all right, I've got to go. Shakes my hand, salute, goes back down, gets in his car, he's gone. The colonel comes over and says, well, he had to go we're in a war.
Right.
He didn't know shit. Pardon me.
That's okay.
And he said, okay, that's it. 9 days after.
Wow.
Which was kind of surprising because I'd never heard of anything given 9
quick.
days after, that quick.
Yeah.
Especially from that. Unfortunately, many years later, my ex-wife just threw it out.
Oh, no.
So I lost the original, and the one that they gave me was one I requested back in '83 when I had to request all my certificates.
Right.
Because I was in the Philippines. She just threw everything out.
Wow.
So that was sad.
Well, that's pretty horrible. Yeah. So fast forward many years later, you stationed at Tinker for a brief period of time.
3 years.
Right? And then and you got a gate named after you. How did that come about?
Well, I was in the SF headquarters one time.
Right.
And chief back then was George Barkman. And he said, Pete, we're thinking of naming a building after you.
Wow.
And I looked at him and I said, no. And he says, why not? It'd be an honor. I said, no. Buildings, streets are named after people that are dead. Mm-hmm. I'm not dead yet.
Right.
I don't need to have something named after me until after I pass away. Oh, okay. So to me, it was dead.
Right.
But what I didn't know is they went ahead and had, back then, Staff Sergeant Jonathan Porter took the project and ran with it for 2 years.
Wow.
Pushed it through everything and got it approved. So one day I was walking into the building and they said, are you ready? And I looked at them and says, ready for what? Well, we're going to have a special ceremony on such and such date for you. And I said, what are y'all doing? What are y'all going to surprise me with something, aren't you? And they said, well, what we're going to do is we're naming a gate after you. I said, I'm not dead yet. No, you got it. So yeah, they went ahead and named Gate 31 after me,
right,
which was nice. But another interesting thing was back in 1991, I was going into the building one day, back when it was they were at 591, and one of the NCOs come walking up, and he said, Pete, I just took my WOPS test. Okay, did you pass? He said, yeah, I even think I got your question right. And I turned around and I looked at him and I said, my question? He said, you didn't know you're on the WOPS test? And I said, promotion test? I said, no. He said, yeah, you're in the PDG. The what? Professional Development Guide. No. Come on. He took me inside the training, opened up one of the books, and on such page, here was my certificate with a little paragraph about the award.
Right.
I said, can I keep this copy? Yeah. Okay. Can I get 4 more? Or 5 more, rather? Yeah. He gave me 5, because I gave each one to my kids.
Right.
Said, here, Dad's in. I was the only cop in the PDG. Still am, as far as I know. But it's gone from a whole page just down to a paragraph now.
Right.
But one of the NCOs a year ago told me when he took the test, there were 2 questions. Because he took it once and then he took it again and it was a different question. I said, so now I got 2 questions on the test. Okay. So I said, okay, fun and dandy.
It's amazing. So now recently you were just put into the Oklahoma Military Hall of Fame. What did that feel like to you? Like,
kind of surprising.
Right.
The reason being is because many years ago, roughly around probably 2001, 2002, I think, a friend of mine was doing the work with the Oklahoma Military Hall of Fame Heritage Foundation,
right,
on the people that have been submitted to be part of the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that he said was they have a board that meets and you sit down and you look through all the records and you grade the records, what you think should be 1 through 5, and then whichever one's got the highest numbers are the ones that go forward, and they do 12 a year.
Right.
So okay, so I went and did it, and it said fine, and it wasn't my thing, to me anyway. And one of the ladies that was there said knew about my history and whatnot. She says, "Well, have you put your history in?" I said, "No." She says, "Well, technically you can't put it in. Somebody else has to."
Right.
So senior Master Sergeant Mike Hodgson was in the squadron at the time, and I said, Mike, you want to submit it? And he said, yeah, I'll submit it. So he put it together and gave it to the commander at the time, and unfortunately I can't remember who the commander was at the time, and they submitted it. Never thought nothing about it until one day early this year, June I think it was, I got an email from Kelly John Farley, and he said that I've been selected for this year for Class 2023.
Right.
And I said, okay. Then the ball started rolling, and who we're going to invite? Everybody. So basically, I just sent it out across the board, and the wing, the mission support group, the cop squadron, and a lot of the defenders, and including all my family, came.
Right.
We had basically about 50, I think it was 54, 55 people show up to honor me anyway. All total, I think they had 407 people for the whole event for all 12 of the people. And not all the people were alive. A lot of them, a few of them were dead.
Right.
Had passed away. You get up on stage and they present you with the plaque and a drawing picture of it.
Right.
And put the necklace on and whatnot. And it's pretty neat.
It's a pretty big honor for a kid from just outside Schenectady.
Yeah. If like I tell the ALS class, spent 28 years in the Air Force as a cop.
Right.
And got a gate named after me. Got a display in the event center of my uniform. Got a display in the ALS schoolhouse of my uniform. Got into the Oklahoma Military Hall of Fame in 7 different magazines or books.
Right.
And whatnot. And when you come in and you're figuring you're going to spend 4 years in the Air Force, and you end up spending over 28, and all of this expands out as you go, plus you get to talk. Sometimes squadrons will ask me to come to their squadron to talk to the troops, the cops,
right.
Or sometimes even AWACS or other units say, can you come to our graduation, ALS graduation or whatever, and talk.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting thing.
Right. Well, the story's great. You've done amazing things. I think we're gonna wrap up here. But before you leave, if there's one piece of advice you'd leave for our servicemen and women now, what would that be? And I know that's a challenging question right off the top of your head, but
probably the best thing would be is that take care of your personnel, your troops.
Right.
Airmen coming up looking for guidance from the senior airmen, the NCOs, senior NCOs, and then the officers too. But one of the things that I can't remember what class it was. I think it was one of the NCO inductions,
right,
for the master sergeant or the senior NCOs.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I told them was, as a NCO, you're going to have the responsibility of taking care of the airmen, but you're also going to have the responsibility of taking care of the officers, because the officers start out as a lieutenant, a rudder ball,
yeah,
and they work their way up, and they've got to learn the two, and that senior NCO is going to be the one to teach them.
Right.
And the funny part was, I don't remember the colonel's name, sad to say, but after it was all over, he come up and he says, Pete, you're right. When I was a butterball, the senior NCO kept chewing my butt out for doing stupid things.
Right.
I said, well, that's the point, is you take care of your people and make sure that they have their equipment and that they know what the hell they're doing.
Right.
Because it's easy to screw up. You know, I screwed up many times when I was young and got my butt chewed out all the time too.
Right.
But you learn, and you keep right on moving.
Awesome. Well, with that, thank you so much, Pete. We appreciate your time coming in here, telling us your story. Very much appreciate your sacrifice and your service. You're still carrying on like a 20-year-old, and that's great.
Yeah, my wife told me that too.
We look forward to seeing you around for a great many years to come. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete.